Firearm Owners Against Crime think it's the NRA or patsies, and I only have an F rating with the NRA. And the reason it's F minus is because I float leadership on this issue too. Many of us in Congress that have been so frustrated by the carnage that has been done by these weapons decided that we were going to hold a sit-in on the House floor. And I proudly walked on that floor with John Lewis, and we sat down there and we demanded just two simple things from the Republicans. Expanded background checks to close all these loopholes that allow people access to these weapons, and to stop the no-fly, no-buy list. If you're on the terrorist watch list, you're allowed to buy one of those guns in this country. We asked to stop that. We still, after all that, couldn't even get a vote on the floor by the Republicans. So yes, I am very much in favor of banning assault weapons, and I have made a vote to do that in a previous session of Congress. I'll be interested to hear what the endorsed candidate of the Firearm Owners Against Crime has to say.
Mr. McAllister, your turn.
Well, there's several things that Mr. Doyle is not telling you. First of all, he wants to go for this assault weapons ban. Have we had this assault weapons ban previously? Yes, we did. We had it in the mid-90s to the 2000s. And what exactly happened during the mid-90s to the 2000s? We had a spike in crime. We had a spike in gang violence. We had a spike in incarceration. So the assault ban weapon, the assault weapons ban did not stop the crime that you think that you're going to stop by putting it into place all over again. The truth of the matter is, and this is something, it cracks me up, when you continuously talk about how you sat on the congressional floor as if you are now an expert on gun violence. As a survivor of gun violence, with a wife that's a survivor of gun violence, with a father that's a survivor of gun violence, let me tell you a little bit about gun violence. First and foremost, it's not people that legally own the guns that are going out there causing terror every single day. It's people that illegally have guns. And the reason why they illegally have guns is because the economy in their neighborhoods are no good, the schools in their neighborhoods are no good, and they can't get access to jobs. You continue to go after legal gun owners thinking that people in an underground economy are going to follow the law. You have to fix the economy, the education, and the employment if you're ever going to fix the gun violence. You're focused on the wrong aspect of this, once again.
So what he's just told you is that he's not for taking these types of weapons off the street. Let me tell you the difference. In Murraysville, you might remember this, a young man who was very troubled walked into Franklin Regional High School with a knife, and he knifed 22 people before they subdued him. Fortunately, none of those people died. Had that person walked into that school like has been done in Colorado with an assault weapon, all 22 of those kids would be dead. Don't tell me there isn't a difference to take these guns off the street. These are military weapons that you could never get an endorsement from the organization that has endorsed you and Donald Trump without promising not to ever vote for legislation like that. So you're never going to see this gentleman here vote to take assault weapons off the street.
Here's a Donald Trump trial. To try to tie to Donald Trump. But let's be clear about what we need to end. You want to end the high-profile shootings, and I want those to end as well. But the truth of the matter is, throughout the United States of America, there's a gun violence epidemic that is not coming from these high-profile shootings that you're continuously talking about. They're coming from illegal guns, and you want to focus on the high-profile situation. I'm trying to end gun violence. You're trying to get the headlines. I'm trying to make sure people aren't dying at 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. And I'm very fearful that if you go back to Congress, you're going to once again focus on gun violence the wrong way and not get kids on the right path, and we're going to have the over-incarceration all over again.
All right, let's move to the next question. I'm told I need to use a mic because this is being recorded. I can't believe you can't pick up my voice somehow, but let me do this real quick. Can we start with Mr. McAllister on this question? What is your general position on trade, free trade? Should the TPP, that's the Trans-Pacific Partnership, be ratified? Should NAFTA be amended? What is your view on trade?
I think that with us being 5% of the population of the world and 95% of the market being outside of these borders, that trade is good. Unlike my opponent, I agree with President Obama that the TPP, in principle, is something that Western Pennsylvania should be putting into place for several reasons. Number one, we need to make sure that we're on a level playing field with the countries that we're trying to engage. Right now, we face tariffs that they don't face. Right now, there are countries that bring their goods here that we can't send there and make the same amount of money. So we have to make sure that, number one, we have more markets to send our products to. But number two, and specifically with the TPP, we have to get the Chinese on a level playing field. There's a reason why U.S. Steel is dropping 25% of their salaried workforce. because you have Chinese steel being dumped into the global market. If you don't find ways to force the Chinese to be able to come to the playing table with other trade partners and start going by similar trade rules, we're going to continue to stay at a disadvantage. So yes, John, I do believe that fair trade is good, but I also think that we have to adjust tax policy so that we're not at a disadvantage like we were with NAFTA in the 90s under President Clinton.
Congressman Doyle, same question.
I said that when I think the president is going in a direction that's not good for my region, that I'll stand up to this president. And I oppose TPP. And let me tell you why. I just came from a session a couple weeks ago with the CEO of U.S. Steel. And Mario Longhi will tell you that this is a bad deal for America. And let me tell you the problem with the Chinese and some of our other trading partners. They don't play by the rules now. There's Chinese steel been dumped into our country below the cost of production. And here's the problem with these trade deals. The enforcement mechanism doesn't work. By the time we take this case to the International Trade Commission, the ITC, to get relief, it's too late. Companies are already hurt. The way the law is written is that you have to be able to prove harm first. It's not enough to know that the country is cheating and breaking the rules. You have to be harmed. You have to actually lose money and lose jobs and watch your business go down the drain before you can file an action in front of the International Trade Committee. That has to change. The reason it doesn't change is that these presidents get fast-track authority to negotiate these bills, and all Congress gets is an up or down vote. I have never given a president, Democrat or Republican, a vote for fast-track, and I will never support a trade agreement when the Chinese continue to manipulate their currency and cheat, and we don't have effective enforcement regulations to protect our industry. So I disagree with the president on that one, and Mr. McAllister.
Well, Mr. Delano, this is why Mr. Doyle just doesn't get it on trade. The truth of the matter is you're not going to be able to get it and get them to play fairly by taking them some commission. What you're going to do is take the rest of their trade partners in a region, get the rest of the trade partners in that region to be on the same board, go by the same rules and have the same rules and regulations, and then force the Chinese to the table to play more fair. Now, the way you're talking about this is not a good deal, and therefore what's going to transpire is we're going to end up having the same old, which is the Chinese manipulating their currency, which is the Chinese dumping goods into the global market, and it's going to be American manufacturers suffering. Instead, you got to put some type of mechanism in place to coerce them to come to the trading table, considering that the rest of the trading partners in the Pacific Rim are not going to be playing well with them until they get right with TPP and the United States on this.
Mr. Doyle, you get
Well,
the last
and
30 seconds.
here's what you don't know about trade. China's not even in the TPP, number one.
I didn't say they were.
Excuse me, please. I've never interrupted you, just as you have. China is not in the TPP, number one. And number two, we have been engaging with the Chinese, and they're in the WTO. They cheat constantly, and we don't have enforcement mechanisms. These trade deals are not good to our country if we can't enforce the deal. The Chinese have never shown good faith, and until they do, I don't think it makes any sense to continue to watch American industries go down the drain. You talk about wanting to keep manufacturing here. You couldn't find a single manufacturing company in Western Pennsylvania that tells you that they want you to support the TPP.
All right, let's go to
John,
another
John,
question
may I
here.
read that real quick?
You know,
Because he said one thing that I said, and I did say, I did not say that China was in the TPP. What I said was the purpose of the TPP was to get China's trade partners all on the same page, going by the same rules, to force the Chinese to come back to the negotiating table to be more fair in their trade negotiations. You're saying that they can't do it in the WTO right now, which, by the way, I do believe the Clinton administration helped let them in. And now you're telling me that a TPP by President Obama is not going to be something that is bipartisan, that they've been working on for years, that will coerce them to start playing nice with their other trade partners. Never said that China was in there.
you have the last word if you want.
Well, whether it's China, whether it's South Korea, or a lot of the countries in that Pacific Rim who don't operate by the rule of law and who suppress their people's rights and have no environmental regulation, saying that we're trading with them on a level playing field is just fool's gold. So when we get a good deal and we have a level playing field, we can compete with anyone. But TPP is not a good deal.
That's the reason why you have trade
All right,
agreements.
let's move to another question. This question is on education, and we'll start with the congressman. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders are stating that college education should be viewed more as a right than a privilege. What is your position on free college education for all students?
Well, I wish we had it when I was putting my 4th kids through. No, let me say this. There's nothing it doesn't have to be four-year colleges. A lot of what Hillary Clinton has been talking about it deals with programs in community college too. There are specialized programs, right in the Allentown section of Pittsburgh, there's the Coding Academy in Pittsburgh, where people learn to code. It's a 12-week program, and people come out certified in coding, and they're getting placed in jobs that are paying $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. We want to see people get the skills that they need. My biggest concern with education is we're not matching employers' needs with educational programs. I think we need more conversation between community colleges and employers who say, what are the skills you're looking for in your company? What do you want graduates to come out of our program and be able to do? And to match that up so that when these young people get out of college, they possess a skill that they can get a job. If you go to a four-year college and you come out with $30,000 worth of student debt and you've got a bachelor's degree in political science, you're in trouble. You're not getting a job where you can pay that loan off anymore. We have to tailor our colleges to work with employers and design programs where people come out with jobs.
Mr. McAllister, same question on
That
education.
was a great political spin, but you didn't answer the question, Mr. Doyle. You didn't answer whether or not you believe in free education for college. You talked about all the different things that we need to do in regards to matching up colleges with the workforce coming out. By the way, we've been doing that for 100 years. And sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't. Now, there's something to be said about making that happen at a higher level, but let's get back to the actual question that was asked. The answer. Do I believe that there needs to be free college education? We're not going to be able to do that. Because the truth of the matter is, if you look at the exorbitant amount of college costs these days, with the books, the housing, and everything else, if you're going to try to make college education free for all, you're going to bankrupt the country. Now, can you go after student loans and bring down those interest rates? Absolutely. I think that students should be able to borrow loans at the same rate that banks borrow money. I think that you can do other things, such as, for example, can you find ways that people can defer their student loans while they're going back to get additional education, or if they're going to buy a house, is there a way to roll two loans into one and make sure that interest rate goes away? Those are things that we can do. But to sit there and say that this exorbitant amount of cost in public education when it comes to college is just going to be free for all, that's just not realistic.
I would say that I don't know about Bernie Sanders, but I would say that Hillary Clinton's proposals that I've read deal more with 2 years in college. And I would say this, that I think we also need programs that allow young people to do public service and work off their student loans. There's lots of areas of the country that are underserved, and if we could get these young people interested in going to some of the underserved areas and helping out for a couple of years, almost like being in the Peace Corps for a couple of years, and get a lot of their college loan forgiven, that would be a service to our country, and it would get this monkey off the back of a lot of young people who are saddled with that.
You get the last comment on this, Mr. McAllister, if you want.
I think the bottom line of what we have to look at is this. We need people to, one, be able to be willing to bring down the college costs, and number two, be able to find jobs for them when they come out. That's what goes back to what the role is in Congress, to make sure that you're putting policies in place where people can find jobs when they come out, so that even if you are a poli-sci major, you can find something in one of your soft skills in order to work and be able to move forward with your career. These are things, again, I know you don't like me bringing up how long you've been in Congress, but you've been in politics for 40 years, and you've been in Congress for 22 years, and these unemployment rates have been around almost as long as I've been alive. So if we're not going to go after those in a way that brings them down in a substantial fashion, we have to do something different than what we've been doing over the last 2 decades.
Last question, and then we're going to go to closing statements. And the last question, the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. The questioner is saying that with most of the exchanges closing, costs skyrocketing, deductibles very high, how would you change Obamacare? Would you repeal it? Would you replace part of it? Would you amend it? Would you vote for it if it were on the ballot again? What's your view on the Affordable Care Act?
Well, I mean, this is the bill that Mr. Doyle and Democrats pushed through 100% of partisan votes, that went through parliamentarian tricks, that made sure they had the Louisiana Purchase and the Cornhusker kickback, and bribed by any other names or called politics in Washington, D.C. in order to get passed. And your Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, said, well, we don't know what's going to be in this bill until we pass it. Now we know what's in this bill. Number one, John, to your point, we see the premiums going up. We know that half the state of Tennessee is going to lose their plan starting in January because insurers keep dropping out of the marketplace. We know here in Western Pennsylvania it's going to go upwards of 55%. But what Mr. Doyle won't tell you is that the ACA is also self-repealing itself as it is. For example, the medical device tax. that you refuse to implement because you know that older voters would be screaming to the high heavens if that tax was put in place, keeps getting kicked down the curb. As well, the Cadillac tax on your beloved unions. So I love unions. My dad's a union member. He finished his career at Claire's Works. But that Cadillac tax on those health care plans, if that was instituted in 2010 like it was supposed to be, that would bring up the cost even more, and people would be shouting from the high heavens. So even when this plan is in place, which by the way, 87% of the individuals covered by the ACA would have already been covered by expanding Medicaid alone. But when you start pulling stuff out of the plan, because you know it's unsustainable, you know it's going in the wrong direction.
Mr. Doyle, same question. Would you amend or repeal the Affordable Care Act?
Well, I certainly would not repeal it. I personally preferred single payer. I remember when we were talking about reforming health care, that the president wanted to put forth a plan he thought that he could get bipartisan support with. He picked this particular plan because it was tried in Massachusetts under a Republican governor, and it was part of a study by the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank. And he thought this would be a way to get bipartisan support. Let's remember where